Good afternoon, everyone. This is Nithin Ramachandra from the Nithin Sports Rush, back with another episode. This is a really special episode, so buckle your seatbelts, get your popcorn ready. Man, first of all, I just want to give a big shout out to our friend Marty Schneider for setting this up. I am joined by Dick Vermeil. He's a legendary coach in the NFL. He brought the Rams to the Super Bowl. He's a Super Bowl winning coach, and he coached a whole bunch of high school teams. His resume speaks for itself. Super Bowl winning coach, obviously Coach of the Year, Sporting News NFL Coach of the Year. You name it, Hall of Famer in 2022. He got inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 2022. Man, his win to loss ratio, 120 wins, 109 losses in his career. Man, what a legendary career, obviously. Super Bowl winning coach with the Rams. Dick Vermeil, thank you for joining the show, and welcome to this platform. Welcome to the family. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. Yeah, I'm hanging in there. Yeah, just following football like everybody else at this time of year.
Yeah, and I spoke on your resume, Super Bowl champion, Hall of Famer. But before we get to that, I want to ask you about, we lost a legendary coach, Mike White. Can you talk about him and obviously his legacy and what he brought to the NFL and his impact to the NFL?
Well, Mike and I were friends over 60 years. We first started coaching together as young assistants at Stanford University, 1965. We became very close friends then and have remained so all the way through. We ended up coaching against each other when I was at UCLA and he was at Cal. Then he went on from there. He went to Illinois and took them to the Rose Bowl. He went on and coached with the Raiders, ended up being head coach of the Raiders. And then when I went back into coaching after 14 years out, he was the first guy I called and hired because I needed somebody that hadn't been out of football, and he had been, and came in as assistant head coach, and he was a tremendous asset. Without Mike, in those 3 years, we wouldn't have turned that team into a Super Bowl team. He was a very beneficial guy and just a superhuman being. Mike had great ability to communicate with kids, with players, with people in the building. Just a fine leader, let alone his ability to coach on the field.
Wow. And obviously, my prayers and thoughts are with his family, and he will live on his legacy. And you won the Rose Bowl championship, which we'll get to. But before, I want to get to your early life. You grew up in California, so talk about your early life and how did Dick Vermeil get into coaching?
Well, I grew up in Calistoga, which is a town that when I was there was the north end of the Napa Valley, 1,800 people, 130 kids in our high school. But great way to grow up, really. You had a lot of freedoms and a lot of structured discipline because everybody knew everybody and everybody else's dad was your dad. It's just a great environment to grow up in with. A lot of close friends, because everybody in the town is your good friend. My dad ran an old garage there and I grew up working in it. And I learned a lot about life and how to work. And he's the guy that taught me that hard work's not a form of punishment. Okay. Anyway, my senior in high school, a new football coach came out of College of Pacific, now University of Pacific, and his first coaching job was Calistoga High School. And he was very stimulating to me. I just had never been around a guy like him. And one day he told me, young man, you could play college football. You have that ability if you wanted to play. But then no one had ever told me that. And so that stimulated me. And then I just watched him and his actions and how he communicated with people and how he taught the game. I said, I think I'd like to try doing that someday. So I went to junior college and caught up. I hadn't planned on going to college. I was going to stay and work for my dad in the garage and hopefully drive his race cars for him. Fortunately, that didn't happen. But fortunately for me, I took his advice. I went into college and I played 2 years in junior college. Then I went to San Jose State and got to be a starter there my last year there. Got my master's in general secondary. Met some outstanding people there. And Bob Bronson, Dr. Bronson, who was my first coach there. Then Bob Tichenal, Gene Mingus. All these guys guided me toward coaching. And I became a head coach in high school, then a head coach in junior college, then a head coach in major university. But I had assistant coaching positions in between each one of those. So I had a lot of experience and I was exposed to a lot of bright people. And fortunately for me, as we just said, I was exposed to Mike White in 1965.
Yeah, speaking of talk about your playing career a little bit, and what was it like playing the sport and before being the coach, and what do you learn from being a player and then transitioning to be a coach?
Well, I was very naive as a player. I didn't know very much, really. I only had really any kind of high school coaching. My senior year, we had 29 kids on the team. Now they only play eight-man football in that same high school, and they got over 500 kids. But anyway, I was very green. I went to junior college. We had 18 guys on the team for a while. The next year I stayed, and I had some success, but I really didn't know a lot about the game. And then I went to San Jose State. My first year there, I was playing under Bob Bronson. I was the third string quarterback, and I learned a lot. I learned a lot about the game, and it stimulated me even more. I would like to learn more about this game and be a teacher in coaching. And then my senior year, the second half of the season, I got to be the starter, but I was not a real good player because I didn't totally understand the game, especially the passing game. Especially the passing game. I was just so unaware of what it was all about. And I gradually taught myself as I got into coaching, going to football clinics, and then coaching as assistants at different levels, then head coach. You gradually learn, but I would say as a player, I was below average and very naive and very uninformed for the most part. But I just loved the game. I just loved the game. And as soon as I got a coaching job in high school, and then I became a head coach, and the only thing I could think about was coaching full time, not teaching any classes, and always be on a football field and preparing in the off season for the next season and all that. And I gradually got the opportunity by accepting every opportunity when it was presented to me. And fortunately, my wife didn't balk on moving. We moved them off many, many times. And I got to be exposed to the likes of John Ralston at Stanford University, who went on and won two Rose Bowls there, beating Ohio State in Michigan with Mike White running the offense, really. I was already now an assistant coach with the Rams as a special teams coach. So, I kept growing, and every time someone offered me a job, I took it. And it was always stuff. And most of the time, when you're offered a job, especially in pro football, it's usually they fire the guy who's losing. And I think when I took the Eagles job, we didn't have a first, second, or third round pick for 3 years, and they'd been losing, and all of a sudden it was a struggle. And it's not like today. There wasn't free agency, and there was all that kind of stuff. Fortunately, there were more draft picks, and even though you didn't have a first, second, or third, you could pick a guy in the 15th round. You might think. Now they don't have that. But overall, it was just a real maturing experience, and I was very fortunate to be around so many coaches that taught me what the game was all about. And I formed a philosophy of leadership just by working with the young kids and working your way up. And I actually probably never changed from being a high school football coach all the way up into from the Rose Bowl to the Super Bowl. I was still just a high school football coach, coaching at a more sophisticated level and coaching guys who were bigger, faster, stronger, and getting paid well to play the game. So, great way to make a living. To me, you're really, really fortunate when what you do for a living isn't a way to earn a living. It's a way to be happy. I really enjoyed it. I overworked myself the first time with the Eagles, and I had to take a break, and I never came back. I went into television, worked in television for 14, was a lot of great broadcasters, the Musburgers, the Tribals, these kind of guys that I enjoyed every minute of that. But when I went back, I wasn't prepared to be what I was. So I put a good staff together, a very experienced staff, and needless to say, in 3 years, we got it done, won the World Championship, Super Bowl 34. Yeah.
Hey, I mean, obviously, you have to work hard, especially in our business. You got to keep taking the opportunities that's given to you, and you did that. And obviously, you turned out well. You're a Hall of Fame coach, legendary coach, and obviously, you didn't know anything about the game when you were a player. But it's just amazing to see what you did, transitioning from a player to a coach. Can you talk about what was it like when you were coaching the high school teams? Just talk about that experience and teaching these young kids back in the day, and then seeing how they grow as a player too.
Well, that was real teaching. I only had one assistant coach on the varsity, okay, and you were teaching them from the stance and how to put the shoes on, okay, all the way on up, and all the fundamentals of the game. And you coached everything. You coached offense, defense, and linemen, linebackers, wide receivers, tight ends. You coached everything. And it really helped me gain insight into all the different positions. And fortunately for me, as I grew in coaching, and when all of a sudden you had 8 or 9 assistants or 10, 11 assistants, all those guys were more experienced. And I learned a lot from them, watching them coach each of their positions. And by the time I left the Eagles in 1982, I really thought I could coach any position on the team, offensively or defensively, because I'd watched so many fine coaches do it. And then as a head coach, you put it together as a package and we call it a team. But the high school experience to me was very, very valuable. It taught me how to build relationships, how to care, how to be a good example, how to teach kids to work and have fun at the same time, how to create a positive discipline, how to teach them to handle adversity and use it as a tool to get better. And all these I was never a demeaning type guy. I was tough. I always worked them probably too hard. But I think the players always knew I really cared. And what I was trying to do was to help them be the best they could be.
Yeah, and obviously you um, after high school you went to Sanford to be an assistant coach in Sanford, and talk about that too because Sanford is a high now they're growing into a big program. Sanford is a big athletic program and obviously great for education, but they're known for football, basketball. But just talk about being at Sanford and being an assistant coach there.
Well, it was a great for me because I went there from being a head coach in junior college 1 year. It happened to be a year that we had a great recruiting class, so we went undefeated. And a number of those kids on that freshman team later went on to Rose Bowls and played the NFL. A number of them. Just a great opportunity, but also to be exposed to John Ralston, fine leader, a great human being, a great recruiter. Always surrounded himself by good assistant football coaches. So I was learning from a lot of good, including Bill Walsh, including Jim Mora. Okay, all these kind of guys, Rod Rust. I was fascinated by their talents, and I learned so much. And of course, Mike White, he was the offensive line coach. And then I went from freshman coach to secondary coach the next year. Then the next year I go for quarterback coach. And then I had Jimmy Plunkett, his first year as a starter. So I was very fortunate not only to have good players, but great examples as coaches to learn from. But John Ralston was a guy that could put programs together and get everybody focusing as a team. And he led all the way from the president of the university down to director of admissions and got everybody involved in building Rose Bowl teams. And John Ralston did it better than anyone's ever done it at Stanford.
Uh, and your when you were saying your quotes stand out to me, and because your quotes mean leadership and connecting with the team players. And one quote that stood out to me that I looked up is people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So talk about that specific quote. Yeah, I think that quote stands out a lot to me when it comes to quotes.
Well, first, in my mind, it's my philosophy. It's true. I really believe that. Okay. And if they know you care, they'll care. They'll give you permission to lead them. Okay. Very few people have the ability to give their best on a consistent basis to people they care about the least. And I think when people recognize their leadership cares about them more than the win-loss record and more about them individually and collectively as a team, it creates a level of trust and they really start listening and believing. And it creates a foundation of solid, solid togetherness, solid discipline, solid willing to accept the responsibility for your own performance and then add to it. All these different kinds of things. And I always just felt those different experiences all started with people knowing you care. I actually read that quote. I think it was made by Franklin D. Roosevelt's wife. Yeah, a long time ago. I think that's where it originated. And she said, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Yeah, so talk about obviously you went to UCLA also as a coach, but talk about the Rams because you had three stints with the Rams, and first as a special teams coach, obviously quarterbacks coach, and then you ended up being the head coach. But just talk about the leading up to the head coach. Just talk about being the special teams and also quarterbacks coach.
In 1969, George Allen called me, the head coach of the Rams, and I was an assistant Stanford and asked me if I would be interested in being interviewed for the first special teams coaching job in the NFL. No one had a special teams coach per se for that one area of the game. And I said I would be. And the reason he called me is he was a personal friend of the Olympic and Stanford track coach, Peyton Jordan at Stanford, and he was a friend. And Peyton recommended me to him. So I went in and I visited with him, and a few days later, he gave me the job. And I stayed there for a year. And Tommy Protro, who I had great respect for at UCLA and how well he played, offered me his offensive coordinator's job. So I left the special team job to become the offensive coordinator at UCLA. And Marv Levy, the great Marv Levy, took my job as special teams coach after I left. And that's when I first met Marv, a lifelong friend. But anyway, that happened. But then I'm coaching the offense for Protro. They fire George Allen the next year, and they bring Protro as the head coach. So I go back to the Rams as his offensive coordinator. And I was with him, and then they fired him, and they brought in Chuck Knox. And Chuck Knox, fortunate for me, asked me to stay on the staff. I coached the running backs and special teams for him. Then UCLA calls me up when Pepper Rogers leaves and says, would you like to be the head coach at UCLA? And are you kidding me? So if I hadn't made all those little moves and decisions, I wouldn't have ended up being the head coach at UCLA. I'm there 2 years. We win the Rose Bowl beating Ohio State. And then I get a call from the Philadelphia Eagles owner, Leonard Toews, a fine man. And he and Jimmy Murray, the general manager, convinced me to leave UCLA and come to Philadelphia and be the football coach. And that's exactly what I did. The first year was really tough because they had no draft choices and they'd been losing forever. But fortunately, Leonard Toews was a fine man, and Jim Murray was very cooperative and never said no to me once in 7 years. Okay. And he allowed me and my staff and personnel to do the X and O football side of it. And he had all the contract side. And we worked so well together, we built a Super Bowl team that got beat. But it was hard to do, much harder there than it was at the Rams. But we didn't have first, second, third my first year, first, second, third my second year, and didn't have a first and second my third year. So there's 8 good football players we didn't have. If we'd had those 8 good football players by the time we went to the Super Bowl, I think we'd have been very tough to beat.
Wow, that's crazy. And speaking of the Rose Bowl, what was it like for you guys to beat Ohio State Buckeyes, a top nation school in college football? But for what was it like just to win that Rose Bowl championship as a team?
Well, they had beaten us in the regular season in a nationally broadcast Saturday game in California at the LA Coliseum. And they had beaten us soundly like 41-21, something like that. They really mauled us. But by the end of the year, we were a much better football team. And I really believed going into it, once we earned the right to go, we tied with Cal Berkeley, Mike White's team. But we were fortunate enough to beat Mike's team when we played in the regular season. So we got the nod to go to the Rose Bowl. And we were 18-point underdog because they had beaten us so badly, and they were the number 1 team in the country. And my team, I had a lot of guys that day play the best game they ever played, all in the same day. And when a high percentage of your guys play the best game they've ever played on the same day, you're a pretty good football team. And that's what if we played them 3 more times, they'd have probably beaten us all 3 times. But they couldn't beat us on the day it was important. And our passing game was really good. John Shire did a great job. Wally Henry, I think, ran for 170-something yards. My coaching staff, Rod Dowhauer, my God, he was our offensive coordinator. Terry Donahue, Dick Tomey, Carl Peterson. I had an unbelievable coaching staff. And they made me look a lot brighter than I really was.
So talk about – I want to go back to the Eagles. And obviously you had the 3 years you were with the Eagles, you didn't have any draft picks to play with. And how tough was that for you as a coaching staff, the front office, and even the players? And like you said, if you had those 8 picks, you would have had a great team. But how tough was that for you to maneuver, to find a way to improve the team, but without draft picks?
Well, a few of the guys they traded for were still there. Most of them were gone. But Bill Berge was there, all-pro inside linebacker, who was a great man. We just recently lost him. A great man, a great influence on the success we had. Frank LeMaster was there. Charlie Smith was there. We had a few players. John Bunting was there. Those kind of guys were there. So there was a core, okay? And I think in the 5 years, there were 11 or 12 guys that were on the original roster that we took all over in 76 that went to the Super Bowl in 1980. I think there was 12 guys. We called them the Dirty Dozen. But I'll tell you, they could play and they knew how to work and they all got better because we approached training camps as if it was a college spring practice, meaning our emphasis was to make our individual players better at playing their individual positions, then putting them together within the scheme of defense and the scheme of offense and everything that you were running. And they just, some average players became better average players. Some from better than average players became Pro Bowl players, and Pro Bowl players like Harold Carmichael became a Hall of Famer. And Bill Berger's been nominated for the Hall of Fame. So with Wilbert Montgomery's just an all NFC, Jaworski becomes NFC Player of the Year. All these kind of guys, that's the reason we won. But they really, really worked hard. You don't work like that anymore. It's controlled by the unions now, and you can't work as long on the field as you think as a coach that the players need to get better. You just can't. And I think it's good for their health overall too.
Yeah, and that's a good thing you brought up. Obviously, a big change from when you were coaching, and now a lot of things are changing in the NFL now. But for you, do you miss the old style of playing, and also old style of coaching to now? Do you miss that?
Oh, I miss coaching. I miss being the leader. I miss being the boss. I miss the X's and O's. But number one thing I miss is the relationships, and intense competition. And the game today is a much more sophisticated game. Let's take my last year as a Philadelphia Eagle head coach. Let's say that's a 1980 Cadillac. Well, I promise you this, the 2025 Cadillac is far more sophisticated. So is the NFL football game. The coaches are all more scheme aware and more polished. It isn't quite as physical a game. There's a lot of rules in hitting now that aren't what they were in the old days. It's a different game, but a great game. It's actually more exciting, I think, because there's more variations of offense. It's more wide open, more things done with the ball, more clever things done with the ball. Fundamentally, I don't think the game is as good, especially in offensive line play. When I watch them play, the coaches don't have enough time to work with them because you got to work on your scheme and your game plans and all that kind of stuff. And you're also worried about injury because you got a lot of money tied up with guys. So all those things. But I think the game today is probably a better game than it's ever been.
Yeah. I want to ask you about the Eagles when you were coaching. Talk about what's it like being in the city of Philly, and obviously they have a passionate fan base, and you already know they go crazy for the Eagles. And for you, what was it? You brought up Michael and also Jaws. We were with Jaws 2 years ago at one of his golf outings, and I was able to connect with Jaws. He's a great guy. He's a great person, and you were able to coach him. But just talk about what was it like being a part of the Philly city, and just talk about the fan base you had.
Well, it was tough first. They like to win, and they're extremely intense, extremely passionate. But once you earn their respect, it's a lifetime respect. You're part of them, And hell, I've lived here. I coached the game. The last game was 1982 for them. Okay, then I coached, of course, the Rams and the Chiefs. But I live here in this community, and I'm treated with great respect, and I appreciate every wonderful gesture thrown my way. But it was tough initially, and I expected it. But I think you learn to handle adversity because the adversity stems from how much they love the team. They may criticize you, but they don't want anyone else doing it. It's like you're part of their family. And I coached in 2 other cities. Kansas City is a great football city. Every bit as passionate as Philadelphia, probably not quite as intense. And my first couple of years in losing, John Wooden told me a long time ago, don't read the newspapers when you're coaching in the city, and don't listen to the talk shows and all that kind of stuff, because he told me direct, what they say about you is good, probably not all true. What they say about you is bad is probably all not true. So you don't need the distraction. Stay away from it. And I did a real good job of staying away from it. Not that I didn't respect them. I didn't need the distraction. And yeah, I think that helped me. And I still, to this day, I don't get involved in really reading, study, or anything that my name's in. I just stay away.
Yeah, speaking of Kansas City, when you were at Kansas City, talk about Marty Schottenheimer and another legendary coach that we lost. Obviously, his son is coaching the Cowboys now, but just talk about what was it like being with the Chiefs and also the legacy of Marty.
Well, first off, that legacy at Kansas City is Lamar Hunt, the Norma.
Lamar Hunt, yep.
Outstanding home. He's the guy that named the Super Bowl. He's the guy that made the AFC. He and a few other guys. As fine a humble a man as I've ever been around my life. In the 5 years I worked for him, I just gave tremendous respect and admiration for him. Carl Peterson was the president. That's the reason I went back into coaching, because he was with me at UCLA and the Eagles, and he'd been president since 1989, and he brought in Marty Schottenheimer. And that whole period of time, probably nobody did any better job of coaching than Marty Schottenheimer. He's a Hall of Fame football coach. And I am in the Hall of Fame. I'm going to feel a lot better when he's in. There's a few other guys that belong in there, too. Tom Coughlin, yeah. And Mike Shanahan, my God. Mike Holmgren, those guys. Dan Reeves, they belong in the Hall of Fame. And I'm going to feel better about my position when they're in. But Schottenheimer was a great football coach. He just didn't have any real luck in the deep playoff brackets. Never got to the Super Bowl, and that's held against him. Shouldn't be. The best football coaches don't always go to the Super Bowl and win. The total organization, you can have a best coach football team before they ever get to the playoffs. In regard to the personnel they have, it was unbelievable how well coached they were. Yeah. So anyway, I'm a Marty Schottenheimer fan. And I broadcast their preseason games from 89 all the way through 96. So I was in their training camps each year, and I did their preseason games, and I got to watch him coach personally. That's when I got to know Brian. He was just a kid. In fact, I brought him into the league in 1997 with me when I became head coach in St. Louis. I brought Brian with me. Got him started in the NFL. Then the next year, his dad took him there. But anyway, Marty Schottenheimer is a Hall of Fame.
No, I agree, and they have to do a better. I mean, obviously, you deserve it. You're a Hall of Fame coach, and you brought up some great names: Dan Reeves, Marty, and obviously, they all of them deserve to be the Hall of Fame also. And I'm just surprised that it's taken a long time to get them into the Hall of Fame. But
I know, just you can put 7 players in and only one coach. Yeah, I think you could go 2 or 3 coaches to catch up, and put fewer players maybe, because there's nobody, especially today, there's nobody more under the gun in a more responsible position in an NFL team than a head football coach. You just stop and think. Look at Andy Reid has done it. Kansas City. It's just an amazing job. Without him, hey, I couldn't do it. Okay, I didn't get it done like he did it. He belongs in the Hall of Fame, and he will be in the Hall of Fame. This year it'll be Bill Belichick, and they changed the system to how they vote, and that hurt it. Last year, no coach got in. Mike Holmgren was selected to be the coach if a coach went in, and he didn't get 80% of the votes, so he didn't get to go in. It's a shame.
And Mike Shanahan also.
Oh, great football coach.
And Tom, do you think Tom Coughlin gets a chance or no?
Oh, no question.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, who's won 2 Super Bowls for the Giants since he left?
No one.
Okay.
Except for Tom Coughlin.
That pretty much defines what I'm talking about.
Yeah. So my father, he was pumped up when you were coming on the show, and he has a question for you. He texted me. He grew up a Cowboys fan, my father. So he wants to know, what was it like coaching in the 70s against Tom Landry?
I think he was probably the finest head coach in that era of all. And there were some great ones, Joe Gibbs and Bud Grants and Parcells and all like that. Tom Landry, very special. Many people said he was a coordinator for the offense and the defense. And a real gentleman, a real bright guy, a Second World War B-17 guy. Okay, so he's brave. And I just had tremendous respect. Every time I was on the field, I was nervous. I couldn't relax around him because I was so in awe of his presence when I was standing here. Great man, great coach.
Yeah, so I want to bring up Marty again. Obviously, she's an amazing woman in sports. She does a great job, and obviously, her grandfather worked for the Eagles. So, what was it like working with her grandfather? And talk about more about her grandfather, because I feel like she talked a lot about her grandfather, and he brought a lot to the Eagles too.
Well, he was a football fan owner. He didn't have enough money when he bought the team, but he had a lot of guts. And when I think he paid $16 million for the Eagles, we couldn't buy him for $7 billion today. Okay, and he had issues. He probably gave away too much money that he shouldn't give away. And, but he never said no to me once. Never said no to me. Anything he could do to help us, when he would do, and we became very good friends. We became very good friends. I'm not a big Scotch drinker. I learned to drink a Scotch with him on Friday nights because he liked it. And I said, Leonard, this stuff is good. And I really didn't like it. But now I can drink it. Okay. But, he was so good to me and my family. And there were so many things about him that it really enabled me to get to know him more as a person than even as an owner. We just became very close friends. And I still think of him often.
Wow. Yeah, and speaking of that, and also I want to transition to the Rams Super Bowl team where you took the team to win the Super Bowl championship. You had Torrey Holt, you had Marshall Faulk, you had Trent Green, you had Kurt Warner. Man, that team was loaded and with a lot of great talent. So talk about
great coaches,
great coaches too.
Yeah, great.
Talk about that Super Bowl team.
Well, there were 9 guys on the roster that went to the Super Bowl. They were on the roster when we took it over 3 years earlier. We went to work like we did in the old days. 2 hours, 45 minutes, almost 3 hours sometimes on the field, twice a day, full pads, a lot of contact. We built the team. The guys that made it ended up being very fine players. The Kevin Carters of the world and all that. Oh, my God. DeMarco Farr and just Mike Jones. All these guys are, again, Orlando Pace, our first pick, got on there. Those kind of guys, Ernie Conwell, my God. Then we brought Eddie Kennison in and then Marshall Faulk late. And it was just a great, great group of athletes. I really believed after about the 4th or 5th game of the season, there was nobody in the league that could beat us if we just played up to our ability. Mike Martz run the offense with Al Saunders and Jim Hannafin. We've got Peter Junta and John Bunning running the defense, but Bud Carson had installed the defensive scheme early our first year, and then he couldn't, health-wise, he couldn't keep going. But, Bud Carson's a Hall of Fame defensive coordinator, okay. And Peter Junta, John Bunning, these guys, Carl Harrison. In fact, I talked to Carl for a long time yesterday. He retired in Arizona. Anyway, it was a great thing, but I wasn't surprised. I expected to go to the Super Bowl and expected to win it. And we were fortunate. Okay, we were fortunate to win it. Anytime you win that game, you're fortunate. And it certainly wasn't a blowout. Okay.
No, it was a close game.
Warner set a record for the passing yards, which has since been broken. But and Torrey Holt, you mentioned him. He's been a candidate for the Hall of Fame a number of years in a row now, and he's up again.
Yep.
Sooner or later, they got to put him in.
I know. What a great career, man! Amazing receiver.
Yeah.
And
he still holds the record for 3 catches that I think were amounted to 186 yards.
Wow!
In 3 catches in a game. One game he caught 3 balls and was 186 yards. It was his all-time NFL record.
And you guys beat the Tennessee Titans 23-16, and like you said, it was not a blowout. It was a close game down to the wire, and you guys pulled it off. And for you guys, obviously, for that, how special was that for you after the final clock hit 0 and you guys started celebrating? And take us back to that moment, just to celebrate.
I've heard other coaches say the same thing. People always want to ask you how you feel in that situation. It's not describable for me. Okay, I don't have the vocabulary to put it into proper words that pays you respect for what just happened and why it happened and all the people involved in making it happen. You mentioned I took them to the Super Bowl. No, you're wrong. They took me to the Super Bowl. They took me. I'm only one person. There are 22 guys on the field out there, offensively 11, defensively 11, then special teams, and a whole roster, 50-something guys suited up. No, They took me for a ride, believe me. But we worked hard to put that team together. And unfortunately, the Charlie Imers, the John Beckers, and the guys in the personnel department, they knew what they were doing. We had unbelievable drafts, and we got Grant Wistrom on there, and Torrey Hope, and these kind of guys in the first round. They could play. And we got better quickly. And the free agency, Marshall Falk, probably the finest athlete I've ever coached. Now the head coach at Southern.
Congrats to Marshall
Falk. Yeah, last year he was running back coach in Boulder. We did not have a weakness. And I can remember telling them about after the fifth game that there was only one team in the league that could beat us. Unfortunately, they're all in this room. If we keep working like we're working and keep our heads level and don't get arrogant, don't get cocky, and just keep playing every Sunday, we'll win it all. I told them that. I said, I didn't want to read it in the paper. I don't want to hear it in the radio. That's between you and I. And so help me God, I never read it in the paper. Of course, I didn't read the paper. But anyway, it never backfired on me, and they proved me right, fortunately. Mike Jones, who I had a text from him yesterday because he was very close to Mike White and wanting to know if it was going to be a service for Mike. But anyway, Mike makes the tackle, and we win the game.
Yeah. Speaking of duos, you had a great duo in Isaac Bruce and also Torrey Hope.
Special.
So,
very, very special. Our first years with him, we had hamstring problems. Once those problems were solved, boy, he was amazing. Just amazing how he could get through breaks and go for the ball and all that kind of stuff. It was in the Hall of Fame. Okay, Torrey Hope belongs to be in there with him. Could imagine an offensive team with two Hall of Fame wide receivers, a Hall of Fame running back, a Hall of Fame quarterback, and a Hall of Fame left tackle. You better win. You ought to win.
And and obviously they're missing. They gotta put. Obviously, once that happens, then I think that's to be honest, that team you had, I think that's the best team in NFL history. I mean, there's other great teams out there, but I think the team.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. It was spectacular, no question, and a little bit maybe ahead of its time because of my coaching staff led by Mike Marks and Al Saunders, those guys on offense, and the talent we had. But I think really last year's Philadelphia Eagle team was good as the best team ever. They did not have a player that wasn't a great player. I mean, there's some Hall of Famers on it, and they could play, and they were well coached, and they could score, they could run, they could do everything. They're not the same team this year. They're not the same team. They're well coached. Those guys from Nick on down to Vic Fangio on defense. My God. But our team in '99 was a very fine. It's got to be one of the top 10 or 11 teams in the history of the league. But I don't think it's number one, number two, or number three.
Yeah, I'm going to put you on the spot here. The duo that you had with Torrey Holt and Isaac Bruce, do you see any team now that has a duo of wide receivers that could potentially be like that?
Well, yeah, there are teams out there that do it. I think the Rams with Puka and what's his name, it just got hurt. But pulled his hamstring.
Yes.
They're all on the field together. Those guys can score from anywhere on the field. And Puka right now is the most impressive wide receiver I've seen this year. So impressive. But there are other teams that have those kind of guys too. Maybe not two Hall of Famers, but two great players. To be a Hall of Famer, you've got to have a complete staff, a complete team that allows you to be as good as you have the ability to be. And you better have a quarterback. If you don't have, you can have a Hall of Fame wide receiver. If you don't have a quarterback close to that, he's not going to appear to be a Hall of Fame wide receiver.
Yeah, I forgot. Is it Devontae? It's not Devontae Adams. I have to look.
Yeah, right.
It's Devontae Adams. So for the Cowboys, what do you say? What do you say with Pickens and CeeDee Lamb? Would you say another one like that with Brian?
Oh yeah. They're special. Yeah, they're very and Brian Schottenheimer's doing a good job with the offense. Beautiful job. I mean, they could score. They can score. I think Detroit's the number one scoring team in football right now, but Dallas is right there. And if they had a defense, they'd be a contender for the Super Bowl, really. It won't take them long. I'm very proud of what Brian Schottenheimer's done there.
Yeah, they're still. I don't. I think they have a slight chance now of making it, but they have to win out.
It's going to be tough.
Yeah, it's going to be tough.
It's going to be very tough. Yeah.
But I want to get to your Hall of Fame. Obviously, you got the nod in the 2022 Hall of Fame, and that was a special moment for you and your family. And talk about what was it like being there and having all the supporters that you had over the years, and doing that Hall of Fame speech, and finally getting putting your name in the rafters. What was it like for you?
Well, for me, it was always unbelievable. I always felt, and I mean this sincerely, I was the end product of so many fine players and so many fine assistant coaches. They put me in there. They put me on their shoulders. I didn't have a vote. I didn't vote for Dick. I don't have a vote to get in there. Other people did. And obviously, I got the 80% of the votes that got me in nominated as the coach. But personally, I think there are other guys that should be in there before I get in there. But I guess I'm a little older and I coach 3 teams rather than just 1 or 2. So anyway, it's just what you do is it puts you in a consistent state of gratefulness. I'm just without those. You mentioned Marshall Falk, without Kurt Warner, without the Kevin Carter, without all these coaches, all these guys. I've worked in my entire coaching career. I worked with 28 other coaches that carried at one time in their career an NFL head coaching title. So I was exposed to a lot of people that knew what they were doing, and they elevated my performance as a football coach.
And for you, I want to go back. I love talking about the families because all that these sacrifice their careers by traveling, and they don't see their families till the off season or till the big games, and when they invite their families. Just talk about the support system that you have with your wife and your family, and for her the willingness to move to all different places to help continue your coaching career.
Well, I'll tell you this: whenever we moved, my wife and family never voted yes. Okay, they always voted no. Even leaving UCLA to go to the Eagles, definitely no. They didn't want to go. And the first year in the East was tough for them. 2 kids in high school and 1 freshman at college. It was tough on them. It was tough on my wife, tough on everyone, but they made it. And the thing is, if we hadn't made that move, I'd have different daughter-in-laws and son-in-laws and different grandchildren. But you come back here, and that's one reason we stayed. I get out of coaching. I have family here. I have grandchildren. Now I have great-grandchildren. So this environment, though, is a nice environment to stay in permanently after coaching. I don't know if all cities are. I think I could have in St. Louis or Kansas City as well. Just great cities. But Philadelphia is the most loyal city. Once they buy into you, they're extremely loyal and extremely intense. And I get along well with them. And I stay. I'm not a guy that walks around practice here. I go to 1 football practice a year, and they know I care, and I have great respect for what Howie's done and what Nick's done and what Jeffrey Lurie's done. Jeffrey Lurie is going to be a Hall of Fame owner. Yeah, we don't have any question about that. He'll be a Hall of Fame owner. But and Howie Roseman could be a contributor. No one's done a better job running the draft as a GM than he's run recent years. But anyway, I'll go back and make it easy to understand. I'm just extremely grateful.
Yeah, like I said in the beginning of the show, you had a great career, obviously amazing resume, Hall of Fame coach, Super Bowl champion coach, coached with a lot of great coaches, coached a lot of great players, and you were part of history when it back like NFL was like one of my mentors is Leonard Marshall. He played for the Giants, and he misses the game of back in the day when he played, and now you see all these, like for example, you see these like the calls make, and obviously they're more about safety now, which is obviously really safety is more important, but like you see flag calls called pretty much like every play pretty much now. So, but yeah, so I want to talk before we let you go. I want to talk to you about what do you like about now, like with these teams hiring first-time head coaches and obviously getting their chances, and also former players getting chances at coaches like Marshall Falk, Deshaun Jackson, Michael Vick, and just talk about the new transition now with coaching.
Well, I like to see the young guys get opportunities. I like to see it. I just wonder sometimes if they have the depth of background required to be the boss, be the leader. But boy, out there, the Sean McVay, who's done a better job of coaching than Sean McVay? Maybe nobody. Okay, maybe all these guys, these young coaches, they've just done a lot of them, Marty, let's see, there would be,
Oh, the guy you talk about current coaches right now.
they've all, there's roots.
Yeah,
The old Denver Bronco program.
yeah.
Mike,
Oh, Kyle Shanahan,
yeah,
um,
Mike,
uh,
Mike,
Mike LaFleur, Matt LaFleur,
Mike Shanahan,
or
Kyle
Mike
Shanahan,
Shanahan.
all those guys worked together sometime or other. And evidently, Mike Shanahan gave him a great base on how to be a good football coach and how to run a great offense and run a great scheme and how to coach individuals. But I'm impressed with these young guys. I really am. They're far further along scheme wise than I was at any time. Yeah, far further along in the scheme of all the clever things they do in ball. A lot of the clever things they do in ball came out of college football. Yeah. Because I broadcast college football for a number of years with Musburger, Project 5 with those guys. And I saw a lot of football. Later on, I saw it in the NFL.
You so are you still willing to broadcast games when the opportunity comes up again? Would you consider broadcasting games
No, that's all mine. I tried it one year after I got out, and all of a sudden I found myself traveling every weekend. I wanted to be home. I wanted to go hunting. I wanted to go fishing. I wanted to go to my grandkids' games and these kind of things. So I never followed up. But no one was banging down my door to go anywhere.
Yeah. By the way, I call Howie Roseman a badass GM. The way he knows the game and the way he makes it's unbelievable how he constructs the roster every year and makes the Eagles competitors. So that's how I call him the badass GM in the NFL because he's great at what he does and one of the best in my opinion. But
he's one of the best, no question.
Yeah, and for you, I want to talk about the movie Invisible with Vincent Papali and talk about that movie and obviously with the Eagles and how special was that
Well, it's been an extremely popular movie. People still ask me about the movie. And that was made in 2001 or 2, okay? And I read the script before they started filming it, and I told the producer, there's a lot of things in this script that aren't true. And he said, Coach, we're not doing a documentary. We're telling a story. The story was true, and Vince has done a great job with the story. He didn't make any money on the movie. He's made money as a speaker, and he's a great speaker, and that's how he made a living, a very good living. And he's got a great family. Both kids are married now, and I've been to both weddings. And he was a special guy, and he did a great job for us. Never played college football. He didn't have football in the school, and he did a great job. He did a great thing, and it was a great story. And they're still watching the movie because you can show it to your grandkids.
For you, who do you got in the Super Bowl this year?
Well, I'm not sure. I'm right now. I lean toward the Rams in the NFC. They're the best team I've seen play.
Yeah.
Okay. I haven't seen much of Seattle. We'll see some of that tonight.
Yeah, tonight.
In the AFC, I don't see him as often as much. Of course, I wouldn't be surprised to see New England do it. I've always thought I got to broadcast his college career when he was playing defense for Ohio State.
Oh, wow.
And I tell you, he was a man then. And everything he did demonstrated what he was all about. And he's done the same thing as a coach. And I have no idea why Tennessee let him go. They let the wrong person go, believe me. But anyway, here he is. He could put that team in a Super Bowl. I don't know. I pull for Buffalo a little bit because I know the head coach, and of course you always pull for Andy, but they're out of it now. But I think Denver right now is the best AFC team. They're extremely well coached.
Yeah.
And he's the offensive coordinator, head coach, and then he's got a defense that's one of the best. They're going to be tough to beat.
Yeah. So there you have it, Dick Vermeil. Thank you for joining the show, Super Bowl champion coach. Man, Hall of Famer, 2022 Pro Football Hall of Famer. Man, like I said, great resume, legendary resume. Shout out to Marty Snyder for sending this up. And Coach, I just want to say thank you for joining the show.
My pleasure.
Let's stay connected.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Oh, yeah, Merry Christmas. Happy holidays to your family. Let's stay connected. And man, this is truly an honor to learn what you did over the career in the NFL, and some of the stories you told today, man, it's amazing. And like I said, great career, legendary career, and thank you again for coming on.
All right. Thank you very much. I'm closing down. All right,
Thank
buddy.